This has been a very busy week for Bethesda. We have a lot to go over, and some of it has gotten very little attention. I thought about making several news episodes this week as each piece of news came out, but I decided that I wanted to make a more comprehensive episode instead. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Up first is the news about Fallout 76 getting an outside developer to help with content creation. This one is huge, and not many really picked up on why this is so big. Starting with the announcement, Double 11 posted that they are working with Bethesda to create content for Fallout 76. Reading the announcement, at Double 11, we've made a name working with some of the biggest developers and publishers in the world. We are excited to be able to announce publicly that we've recently begun working with Bethesda Game Studios to create new challenges for players of Fallout 76. Since its release in 2018, Fallout 76 has invited players from all over the world to create a unique dweller, leave the vault, and explore the many wonders and challenges of the wasteland of Appalachia. Before I continue with the announcement, I want to touch on this first part. For one, this is a big deal. Bethesda has made it well known that they prefer to keep things in-house. Giving another studio the ability to create content is a big step, and a good one at that. Second, the word use of challenges was taken too literally by some in the community. It does not mean that they are creating challenges like we see for collecting score, but rather it means that they are creating new content that is challenging. The announcement continues. Bethesda and Double 11 began speaking in late 2020, and since then, we've worked together on a host of new exciting content that will be enjoyed by this passionate community of fans later in 2022. It's a privilege to be trusted to work on one of the most iconic franchises in gaming history. Double 11 CEO Lee Hutchinson said, "The team we've assembled to work on Fallout 76 are so passionate about the series, working with Bethesda is a dream come true. We've loved working on this game so far, and from small beginnings, our team is expanding as we plan to develop more content in the future, so keep an eye on our careers page for more information on open roles across all disciplines." As many of you might not know, Double 11 has made a name for itself as a support studio and has worked on many titles, most notably Minecraft Dungeons and Rust. The most interesting thing about the announcement is that they are opening new positions for this project. While much of Bethesda is focused on Starfield, bringing in this studio is a great move. Even more to the point, as the Bethesda Fallout 76 team begins to put more time in on 76, we will start to see more content being released. Basically, what this partnership means is that more devs equals more content. Double 11 expanding its team is a good thing, as they will likely be handling the bulk of the content until after Starfield releases, and very likely after, as Bethesda ramps up production on the next Elder Scrolls game. This move is very encouraging, and everyone should be happy to see this. Now that we have gotten that out of the way, there is some more Fallout 76 news that came out. This time, there was an interview with design director Mark Tucker. It reveals some interesting information. The interview starts off by talking about the Alien event. The first question, player reaction to the aliens, has been overwhelmingly positive. Has this changed how you plan to use aliens going forward? Mark replied, "The reaction has been fantastic. Obviously, when we put things in the game that generate such positive reactions and engagement from our community, we can't help but consider how we could expand it in the future. The aliens are quite committed to their research, so players should anticipate future sightings." This event is faster paced than the ones we've seen previously. Will we see more shorter events with varied locations in the future? Mark said, "Enabling the public event to occur at varied locations is something we will continue to pursue." That was a very positive takeaway from this one. The duration of the public events tend to come from our iterative process and how they play. Pacing matters. It really boils down to each event. We hone the timing and pacing of these events as we develop and playtest them. This includes making adjustments based on feedback we get from our players that participate in our public test servers. How important are high-level players for public events like this? Do they affect decisions around difficulty and loot? Mark replied, "We want to create things that everyone can participate in, have fun, and get cool rewards. For our seasonal events, we tend to skew a bit lighter on the difficulty to give all our players a chance to be successful and get the cool rewards. For the future public events in Update 36, Test Your Mettle, we're leaning towards making them more challenging with recommended levels of 50 plus. Can we look forward to some NPC interactions in the future? Fans seem to want the Brotherhood of Steel to weigh in on these alien invaders." Mark answered, "Yes, we have a lot of new characters coming later this year in our Expeditions the Pitt release. We will have more details in the future, but players get to meet and interact with a variety of new NPCs with a lot of different backgrounds and stories to tell." At this point, I want to cut in because the question asked is not really answered here. I don't know if maybe Mark misunderstood the question or if he just didn't have a proper answer for it. Either way, the answer does tell us that we will get new NPCs, so there's that at least. Moving on to the next question. The next major event on the horizon is the Pitt Expedition. How exciting is it to go beyond West Virginia? Are you planning to add new locations to the Fallout world? Mark said, "The team is extremely excited about the work we are doing both on the Expeditions feature itself and the first location we are venturing to, the Pit. We've spent a lot of time working on really pushing the contrast between the Pit and Appalachia. We really want players to feel like they're stepping out into a different place when they first arrive to the Pit. And we're working hard to make sure that the same feeling continues all the way through." Expeditions is an exciting new feature for the game. Obviously, going back to the Pit has been a fun process for the dev team. As far as going to new locations in the Fallout world, I will say this. The feature does set us up really well for that possibility, doesn't it? The final question. You've said the team is adding authentic Pittsburgh streetlights and fire hydrants to the Pit. Will we also get other regional details like French fries on our sandwiches or ubiquitous parking chairs? To which Mark replied, "We are paying close attention to a lot of different details from Pittsburgh and the previous Fallout 3 DLC. Again, we really want to feel different and sell the fantasy of going someplace different outside of Appalachia. I don't want to give it all away here, but I hope players that know the city and the previous DLC will see and find things in their adventures that are familiar from those previous experiences." A lot of Mark's answers were a bit vague, but I think this is mostly because he is trying not to give any spoilers. It may also be because they have not yet nailed down all of the details. Either way, the new content should prove to be very exciting. So the major takeaway here is that the Pit is going to look and feel different from Appalachia. Plus, this is only the start. More locations are coming. Now let's switch gears here and talk about Starfield. Bethesda released an interview with lead designer Emil Pagliarulo. The studio spotlight reveals some interesting information, so let's dive right into it. The first question, what is a normal day in the life of Starfield's lead designer and writer? Emil said, "A normal day? Making a game like Starfield during a global pandemic? No such thing. The role of any developer can change dramatically depending on the stage of the project. In the early days, during pre-production, it was the super fun and daunting task of coming up with the fictional foundation of a brand new universe, our first new IP in over 20 years. What are the major locations? Who are the major characters? And most importantly, how do those tie into the main story? Now that we're in full production, the majority of my time is spent either meeting with the designers to help guide their work or playtesting the game constantly to gauge our progress and see what might need to be adjusted. You know, our unofficial motto is great games are played, not made. And that means experiencing Starfield the way the player would at every stage of development. We're brutally honest with ourselves about what is and isn't fun, what does and doesn't work, and doing what we need to so players can get the experience they expect and deserve. This answer is actually quite encouraging because it tells me that the team is on the right track with making Starfield the game that we all hope it will be. On to the next question. How did you get to where you are? Emil replied, "You know, I've been in the industry for 25 years at this point, 19 of them at Bethesda. In that time, I've worn a few hats, created different types of content, but now it all feels like training for Starfield. You can't even start making a game like this unless you know what you're getting into, so that experience has really proven invaluable." We're definitely curious as to where you were before Bethesda. What was your first project in games? Emil answered, Thief Gold at Looking Glass Studios. That was super exciting for me because Thief, the Dark Project, was my favorite game, so not only was I working in the franchise, but I was also putting my work directly into the existing game I loved so much. What role did you start out in at Bethesda, and what was the first project you worked on? Emil replied, Designer, Senior Designer? I honestly can't remember if we even had the senior title back then. We've changed a lot over the years. Literally, the day I arrived at Bethesda, I was put on the Blood Moon expansion from Morrowind, and I met some great people I still work with to this day. What has been your favorite thing that you've worked on so far? Emil answered, I've really loved every game I've worked on for various reasons, so this answer could be different depending on the temperature, the time of day, or whether or not I've just had some coffee. And I'm going to remove Starfield from the equation because it seems too obvious. Thinking about it now, Fallout 3 really stands out. We had just acquired this classic IP, and it was my first time being a lead, and we really had to create everything from scratch. So there are a lot of things that became staples of the franchise that I had to help create from the whole cloth. VATS, the lockpicking minigame, the dialogue system, some of the new creatures and weapons, meeting Liam Neeson to record his lines, how can you beat that? And you know, Fallout 3 wasn't a huge game really, not by Bethesda standards, but it was tight, and it was really well received. So there was this sense of not only did we not blow it, we really had created something special. That was an exciting time. You've been with Bethesda Game Studios for 19 years. You must have a favorite work-related story. Emil replied, One of my absolute best memories was when we had this kid visit us from the Make-A-Wish Foundation. I remember talking to him, and he told me how big of a Dark Brotherhood fan he was, and how much it meant to him. And I had gotten this replica blade of Woe made. I mean, this thing was metal and heavy, and the handle was wrapped with leather. It was sitting on my desk. I remember saying, Hey, hold on a minute, I have something for you. I went to my desk and got it and gave it to him. And man, to see his eyes light up, and the shock on his face. It was a simple gesture, but it meant a lot to this kid, and it's something I will never forget. I love this story. It just shows Emil's true character. What a nice gesture to make a sick kid's day. These kinds of things are what I love about Bethesda. They're always doing things like that, and even at times adding in characters to their games for people like this. What's the best thing about your job? What makes you the happiest? Emil said that Like a lot of things about my job at Bethesda Game Studios has changed over the years. There was a time, let's call it a decade ago, when I was really almost obsessed with my individual work, my writing, my quests, my scripting, really trying to get it all right so fans would enjoy it. These days, I'm really happy when I get to help other designers reach their creative peak. Whether that's brainstorming design ideas with them, playing their quests and providing feedback, or really just sharing my experience with them. Nothing, and I mean nothing, beats the feeling of coming out of a meeting with a designer and they're just energized, they're psyched, and you helped them get there. What is your favorite thing about Bethesda Game Studios? Emil answered, honestly, it's the relationships I've forged here. It's not only crazy to think that I've been here for almost 20 years, but that I've worked with some of the same people for just as long. Having that shared history and experience is just so invaluable, so special. And it's really hard to describe the experience of starting a new project, being in pre-production, and talking with Todd about what we might want to do, what we might want the game to be. Because you have these conversations and there's a real magic in them, because you sort of put on your clairvoyance hat and you realize in a few years, gamers are going to be playing this game. And this is where it all started. What does Starfield mean to you? Emil said, saying you're going to create the studio's first new IP in 20 years is one thing. Actually pulling that off, that's a different story. It's been so awe-inspiring watching Starfield morph into this amazing game little by little, and with us covering so much new ground. There comes a point when you're working on a game and it's just kind of a mess, especially early on, because, newsflash, that's what game development is. But when you get to that point where systems are starting to come online and things are starting to work well and gel, and you see everything forming into the vision you had when you first started this crazy journey, when that first happened with Starfield, it was really an, oh wow, yeah, this is something really special. Players are going to lose their minds. Now we just have to finish it. Players are going to lose their minds. What a bold statement. With what I have seen so far, I have no doubt that we are going to see this game as one of, if not the greatest game to come out of Bethesda. Moving on to the next question, who or what has inspired you? Emil replied, that's easy. The entire Bethesda Game Studios design team. I've been very fortunate in that I get to represent Bethesda, Starfield, and our amazing design team. But this is a team sport. We can only do it together. There are a lot of incredibly talented people working on Starfield you may never have heard of, but without their passion and dedication, a game like this simply cannot get made. The whole team draws a lot of inspiration from other games too. Thief still ranks as one of my favorite games of all time, but I play a lot of games from all different genres. My gamer score is something like 168,000, and that's just the Xbox games I play. So there's always something that inspires or excites me. I really love playing games that just make me shake my head like, wow, I know how they did that, and it is a crazy accomplishment. The newer Spider-Man games have been like that for me. Or Cyberpunk. Man, to make a giant open-ended environment like Night City, that is no easy feat. Seriously impressive. The last question, what advice would you give to someone looking to get into game development? Emil said, I think games are at something of a crossroads, honestly. We've got a lot of moving parts in the industry these days. Everyone is largely working from home because of COVID, NFTs are starting to be introduced, some gamers are starting to experience franchise fatigue. But the advice I would give to anyone looking to get into the industry is ignore all of that. We're in a weird bubble right now. You need to focus on the most important thing, and that most important thing is, do you love games enough to want to commit your life to making them? You know, games are fun. That's why we love them, and very often making games is fun. But you know what? Very often making games isn't fun. It's hard work. It can be stressful. Depending on your position, there can be a lot of moving parts to manage. So you really need to be one of those people who can stick something out and hold on to your vision and share your creativity with a like-minded team. Because at the end of it all, there really is nothing like it. Seeing your game on the shelf, or available for download, or part of the public conversation. But the best part, the absolute best part, is playing the game after it's released and realizing, wow, this game is awesome, and I'm a part of that. So love what you love, don't lose sight of that, and be ready to work. I'm glad that Emil talked about this because the gaming space is changing. I have a problem with NFTs, as do many of you, for a lot of reasons. It should not be in the gaming scene at all, let alone even exist. Okay, I will get off my soapbox for now and continue with what was said. As I was saying, I agree with Emil. Games are fun, but they are hard too. It takes a lot of work and dedication to create a truly great game. Sometimes that means sacrificing time you have for other things while you focus on the work involved to make sure the game you are making is as good as it can be. With all of this news, we are starting to see how Bethesda is really getting back to making great games and getting its focus back. Bringing on more help for Fallout 76 is huge, and it means that Bethesda, and more importantly Microsoft, is all in on 76. They have not given up and are reinvesting in it. Since we're on the subject, this weekend has some weirdness going on. The holiday scorched are back. Not sure why, but there it is. Also, we have double currency going on, so get out there and collect those caps, script, and gold bullion. I don't know about you, but I'm excited for the future of Fallout 76 again. Starfield is shaping up to be the best game yet from Bethesda, and the future is bright. With that, this news episode comes to a close. I hope all of you got something out of this. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, if you still haven't, and share this with your friends. As always, I'm just glad you stopped by, and I'll see you in the next one.